Elena used to believe marriage meant safety. In the beginning, Armin had been gentle, the kind of man who spoke softly and made promises about a peaceful future. But those promises faded the moment she told him she was pregnant. His smile disappeared, replaced by cold distance and sudden bursts of anger she could never predict. That night, the storm outside mirrored the chaos inside the house. Rain slammed against the windows as Armin's voice rose, sharp and cruel. Elena tried to calm him, one hand protectively resting on her growing belly, but nothing she said reached him. His eyes held no warmth anymore, only resentment. "You've ruined everything," he snapped. Before she could react, he grabbed her arm and dragged her through the house. She stumbled, pleading, her heart racing with fear not for herself, but for her unborn child. The back door burst open, letting in freezing wind and rain. Elena's thin clothes offered no protection as he pulled her across the muddy yard. The dog shed stood at the far corner, dark and reeking. She shook her head, begging him to stop, but he shoved her inside without hesitation. The door slammed shut, and the sound of the lock clicking echoed like a final sentence. Inside, the air was damp and suffocating. Elena curled into herself, shivering uncontrollably. Tears mixed with rain on her face as she wrapped her arms around her belly. "It's okay," she whispered softly, her voice trembling. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." But as the storm raged on, Elena realized no one was coming to save her. The convoy moved like a shadow through the rain-soaked road, engines low and steady, headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside the lead car, Victor sat in silence, his sharp eyes scanning everything beyond the glass. He wasn't a man who missed details, and tonight something felt wrong. As they passed a quiet stretch of land, a faint sound reached him. Not loud, not clear, but enough. A cry. Weak, desperate, human. "Stop the car." The driver hesitated for only a second before obeying. The convoy slowed, tires crunching against wet gravel. Victor stepped out into the storm, rain instantly soaking his coat, but he didn't seem to notice. His gaze locked onto the far edge of the property, where a small, broken shed stood under flickering lightning. Another sound. Softer this time. He didn't move closer, not yet. Instead, he watched, calculating. Years of power had taught him one thing: never act without understanding the full picture. "Check it," he ordered one of his men quietly. The man approached the fence, careful, observant, then returned moments later. "There's someone inside, a woman. Looks injured. Locked in." Victor's expression darkened, a flicker of something dangerous passing through his eyes. He turned his gaze toward the house, where warm lights glowed behind closed curtains. Someone inside was living comfortably, while she suffered in the cold. "Find out who owns this place," he said, his voice calm but heavy with intent. As the convoy pulled away, Victor remained silent, but his mind was already working. This wasn't over. Not even close. Somewhere behind them, in that broken shed, a helpless woman waited. And Viktor Volkov had just taken notice. The night Armin left the house drunk was the night everything changed. His car sped off into the darkness, music blaring, leaving the property in an uneasy silence. For the first time in days there were no footsteps, no shouting, only the sound of wind brushing against the broken shed. Minutes later, shadows moved beyond the fence. Two black vehicles rolled in without headlights, stopping just short of the yard. Men stepped out swiftly, their movements precise and controlled. One of them approached the shed, inspecting the rusted lock before breaking it open with a single forceful strike. The door creaked open. Inside, Elena barely reacted at first. She was curled into herself, too weak to even lift her head properly. The sudden beam of a flashlight made her flinch. Fear shot through her. She didn't know who they were, and for a moment, she thought Armin had sent them to make things worse. "It's okay," one of the men said quietly. "We're here to help you." Help. The word felt unreal. They carefully lifted her, wrapping her in a warm coat. Elena winced at the movement, her body trembling uncontrollably, but she didn't resist. She had no strength left to fight, only a faint, fragile hope. As they carried her toward the vehicles, her eyes fluttered open just enough to see a tall figure standing near the car. He didn't step forward, didn't speak, he only watched, his presence calm yet powerful. Elena couldn't understand why, but something about him made her feel safe. Within moments, the convoy disappeared into the night, leaving behind an empty shed, and the beginning of a reckoning Armin would never see coming. Armin knew something was wrong the moment he staggered back home. The house was too quiet. No soft movements, no fearful presence waiting for him. A strange unease crept into his chest as he called out Elena's name, his voice echoing unanswered through the rooms. Then he remembered the shed. He rushed outside, nearly slipping on the wet ground, his breath uneven. When he reached it, the broken lock hung loose, the door slightly open. His heart slammed against his ribs as he pushed it wide. Empty. For a second, he just stood there, staring at the space where she had been. Then panic surged in, sharp and suffocating. No, no, no! He muttered, running a hand through his hair. Someone had taken her. But who? Inside the house, he began tearing through everything, checking windows, doors, any sign of forced entry. There was nothing obvious. Whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, far from that chaos, Elena lay in a warm, quiet room. Clean sheets replaced the damp filth she had endured. A doctor carefully checked her condition, while a nurse adjusted the blankets around her. Though her body ached, she could finally breathe without fear. When she opened her eyes, Victor stood by the window, his back turned, his presence steady. He didn't approach immediately, giving her space. "You're safe now," he said simply. Back at the house, Armin grabbed his phone with shaking hands, dialing every contact he had. Fear was quickly turning into desperation. He didn't realize it yet, but he wasn't searching for Elena anymore. He was stepping into a trap set by someone far more powerful than him. Armin's desperation turned into reckless action. Calls were made, favors demanded, and threats thrown at anyone who hesitated. He searched everywhere, hospitals, nearby towns, even questioned neighbors, but every lead ended in silence. It was as if Elena had vanished from the world entirely. The more he searched, the deeper his fear grew. Whoever had taken her wasn't ordinary. Days later, a message finally came. No name, no number, just an address. Against his better judgment, Armin went. The location led him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The air inside was cold and still, the kind that made his instincts scream to turn back. But his pride pushed him forward. Lights flickered on. Men stepped out of the shadows, surrounding him with quiet precision. Armin's confidence cracked instantly. "Where is she?" he demanded, though his voice lacked its usual strength. A slow, deliberate sound echoed behind him, footsteps. He turned. Victor emerged from the darkness, his expression calm, unreadable. There was no anger in his eyes, which made it far worse. This wasn't a man acting on impulse. This was control, absolute and terrifying. "You're looking for your wife," Victor said evenly. Armin swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. "You took her. You have no idea who you're dealing with." A faint, almost invisible smile touched Victor's lips. "No," he replied quietly. "You don't." With a slight gesture of his hand, one of the men stepped forward and dropped a folder at Armin's feet. Inside were photographs, documents, evidence of everything he had done. Every cruelty. Every crime. Armin's hands trembled as realization hit him. This wasn't just about Elena anymore. This was the beginning of his downfall. Armin's world collapsed piece by piece as the truth settled in. The evidence in that folder wasn't just threatening, it was complete. There was no escaping it, no twisting it in his favor. For the first time, he felt something unfamiliar, helplessness. "Please!" His voice cracked, pride shattered. "I'll fix everything. Just tell me what you want." Victor studied him in silence, as if measuring the weight of his words. Then he stepped closer, his presence alone enough to make Armand shrink back. "What I want," Victor said calmly, "is something you can't give." A nod from Victor was all it took. His men moved in, not with chaos, but with chilling order. Armand wasn't beaten or dragged screaming. His punishment was far more precise. His power, his reputation, his control, all stripped away. Authorities would soon receive everything they needed. His life as he knew it was over. Miles away, in a peaceful, sunlit room, Elena held her newborn daughter for the first time. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they weren't from fear, they were from relief. The nightmare was finally behind her. The small baby stirred in her arms, and Elena smiled softly. "Hope," she whispered, naming her. Near the window, Victor stood quietly, watching without interrupting the moment. He wasn't part of their world, not truly, but for once, that didn't matter. Elena looked up at him, gratitude in her eyes, something unspoken passing between them. No words were needed. For the first time in a long while, peace existed, and it had been earned.